It's the book of Ecclesiastes 1 and 9. The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. And before I get on with this video, I want to give all praises to Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai, and double honors to your apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone. And shalom to you, hopefully elect. I'm your brother, Yahweh from Great Millstone, Orlando. Your fellow doomsday prophet, if I may add. All right. There is nothing but doom and gloom coming to America. All right. And speaking of, I'm going to grab this to speak on that doom and gloom, that gloominess. In Zephaniah 1 and 15, that day is a day of wrath. That day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, a day of wasteness and destruction, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness. All right. And when I think about, when you go outside and, it's one of those days where the skies are looking uncertain. It's that gloominess, gray clouds, which again, it gives that that uncertain feeling of, you don't know if it's going to rain, how the weather's going to be for that day. You don't know if you should bring get you an umbrella just in case. It's just one of those days where you don't know, just uncertainty. And to liken that unto the days that we're coming into, a lot of uncertainty, even for those of us of the hopefully elect, which is why Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai, the Spirit, is going to have to be with us and guide us, like it tells you, 2 Ezra 16. All right. Because, one wrong turn, one wrong move, it can be your last, So, on another note, this is why we are putting our trust in Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai. We're being trained, we're being exercising faith. All right. Because as we're seeing Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai, and as we should be praying, make no mistake about it. These things are necessary for us to enter into the kingdom. So, as I like to say, there's no way around it but through it. Something that I find rather very interesting, because I've been studying characteristics of animals. We can learn a lot from the animals, the creatures. And one thing, I saw something about when there's a storm coming, because animals, they can sense when a storm's coming, and specifically dealing with the cows and bulls. Cows, they try to basically get away from the storm, get ahead of the storm, because of course, they don't want to deal with the what's the word? The turbulence, if that's a good word. But they don't want to deal with the storm, basically. But bulls, rather than running away from the storm, they just embrace it. Basically, they go through the storm. They what they would say, weather the storm. because like I say, there's no way around it but through it. You know. So like I said, this is necessary. These things, that's what's coming down on pipes, is necessary for us to enter into the kingdom. So Lord willing, the scriptures talk about being courageous, right? Just tackling it head on, and may the spirit of Yahweh Shema be with us, because that's our best bet. Because what's coming, this is known to be the worst time in history. This is the worst time known to man. So, that's no light thing. But nevertheless, like it tells you in Romans 13:5, things are written aforetime was written for our learning. All right, so we have these different examples to learn from. Slakia. I know I misquoted that, so I'm just looking for it real quick. And please bear with me. Working these night shifts, man, it really takes a toll on your body, your mind. You never really fully recover. Your body never really recovers. So, this shit is tough. So, as usual, if I sound a little out of it, if I sound a little, I can't even articulate the words, but discombobulated, please forgive me. Lord willing, the Spirit is on me to get through this. But what I meant was Romans 15:4, Salakia. Romans 15:4, as far as the things that were written aforetime was written for our learning. All right. Because there is no coincidence. They say history repeats itself, which is why I read that Ecclesiastes. All right. Because this is something that this picture here, I posted it on, my YouTube, going into these past two events, which one led to, well, both of these events, basically aided the fuel to wars, depressions, Great Depressions. So again, it's no new thing under the sun, as I read. All right. As this post says, it says we've done this mass tariff thing 3 times in American history. Got the 1828, the 1930, the 1828. Well, actually, I've got 2 videos. That'll Lord willing further expound on these 2 events. All right. But reading on, it says all spaced about 100 years apart, because everyone who remembers the last one needs to be dead for the next one to happen. The last 2 cause depressions. This one will totally make us rich though, because one thing is going to lead to another, and that MOTB is going to be mandated. One thing is going to lead to another, and it's going to lead to the setting up of this new system, in which a new way of buying and selling. All right, a new way of buying and selling system. All right. So without further ado, I'm gonna get into these videos, and of course, as usual, fair use.
1828, Congress.
Fair use. I'm not making any type of monetary gain off of any of these videos. This is strictly for informational purposes. So without further ado, this is just some information going into the tariffs of the 1828.
1828. Congress passed a tariff that increased the rates on imports into the United States to as much as 50%. This was the largest increase in the country's history. The aim was to protect American manufacturing in the North by making importing foreign goods more expensive. There were strong feelings about the tariff of 1828. Reactions were divided by geography, and the country split in a way that would later be echoed by the division between the Union and the Confederacy in the Civil War. People in New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, and Kentucky generally supported the tariff. Meanwhile, Southerners nicknamed it the Tariff of Abominations. Residents of New England mostly opposed it as well, though not nearly as unanimously as in the South. Support of the tariff was one of the issues that helped decide the election of 1828. John Quincy Adams lost to Andrew Jackson. Jackson, however, disappointed his native South Carolina base by supporting the tariff to help pay the national debt. The tariff forced Southerners to buy manufactured goods from businesses in the North at high prices. On top of this, Britain was importing less cotton because their profits from exports had dropped, which also hurt the Southern economy. The tariff was reduced slightly in 1832, more of a gesture than a fix. By 1833, South Carolina was threatening secession. President Jackson compelled Congress to further reduce the punitive tariff rates, while also granting him the power to use military force against South Carolina if necessary. Congress passed the 1833 Compromise Tariff. This brought the rates back to a reasonable level, but the damage had been done. The reality of the country's deep economic divisions and disparate concerns had been brought into stark focus, causing tension that would simmer for another few decades and then spill over into the Civil War.
So you see, you know, it all sounds too familiar when you get into it. It all sounds too familiar. All right, you know, because certain of these events led to, you know, the Great Depression, which these events spilled over into this was fuel for the Civil War. All right, when you get into it, you know, you mentioned they mentioned how you know, the president basically using that threat of force, the threat of the military, right? You know, because again, it's all sounding too familiar. You know, it all sounds too familiar. You know, because what we see today is nothing but orchestrated chaos. I said this before. Because when it comes to Trump, man, you know, when it comes to Trump, this guy's either really stupid or he's really being told what to do. And I'm under the impression that he's really being told what to do. As you know, as far as these, you know, dumb moves, all right, you know, because, you know, he's basically throwing America, furthering America's destruction, you know, because, you know, America is circling the drain, but he's just more so expediting the process, which again, we're with it, you know, we're totally for it, you know, but, you know, with certain of these terrorists, you know, it led to economic chaos, all right, division, you know, Egyptian against Egyptian. Like I said, these events spilled over into, they contributed to the Civil War, which was what, around 1860, something like that, you know. Like I said, man, it's all too familiar events, because again, history repeats itself. You know, because one way or the other. All right. Now we don't know how it's going to play out, but just paying attention. You know, if you're watching, you know, because we're seeing that we're seeing it more and more play out. Like I said, you don't know how it's going to play out exactly, but you know, we're seeing the more and more we are seeing the dots connect. All right, because with all that being said, here it is, gold. Let me look that up real quick. Because you know, the more that price of gold goes up, that means that, you know, basically more and more the dollar is on its way out. So the price of gold right now, we'll just look this up real quick. Last time I checked, it was over 3,300, which that number 33 is, you know, spiritual on the left hand. And just bear with me. I was about to say, damn. I was about to say 5,000, but that's something else. So I mean, if I'm correct right now, if this is correct, because I'm trying to look at multiple sources. Because like I said, last time I checked, it was over 3,300, which, like I said, is a spiritual number on the left hand. You know, that's some that 33, you know, goes into some witchcraft. But it's looking like, yeah, it's about the same, you know, 33, over 3,300, which this is the highest that it's ever been in history. You know, so yeah, because again, when the price of gold goes up like that, the more the price of gold goes up, the more that signifies that the dollar is on its way out. All right. You know, because, you know, the new talk, or not the new talk, but they've been talking about it, you know, as far as this recession, the talks of recession, which we've been in the recession. We've been in the recession since 2008. You know, America hasn't really recovered since 2008. You know, from 2008. The new talk is, well, what they need to, you know, because they don't want to invoke fear, you know. So, you know, they're going to try to, you know, dumb it down as much as possible, water it down as much as possible. Because the new thing is going to be, because we're heading into another depression. That's the point. We're heading into another depression. All right. Again, that's why I want to play this next video. That's why I'll play this video. I want to play this next video.
Trade wars. They don't involve missiles, tanks, or guns, but they can cause a lot of damage. The United States learned this the hard way in the early 1930s with the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. Up until that time, the U.S. used tariffs, which are taxes on goods produced or grown abroad that are sold in the U.S., as a protectionist policy, or a policy aimed at shielding domestic industries from foreign competition. Tariffs increase the cost of foreign goods, making American goods relatively cheaper and therefore more attractive to customers. So, when farmers in the US started struggling financially in the late 1920s, their representatives in Congress tried to help them with tariffs. Senator Reed Smoot of Utah and Representative Willis Hawley of Oregon sponsored a tariff bill that was originally meant to only raise tariffs on foreign agricultural products, to specifically help American farmers. But as the bill moved through Congress, other lawmakers tried to help their constituents who worked in other industries, like manufacturing and mining. And by the time it passed through Congress, the bill was calling for 890 different tariffs to be raised on a huge variety of items, from clothespins to oil drums to bottle caps, raising tariffs by an estimated 20% on average. Opposition quickly formed. More than 1,000 American economists signed a petition urging President Herbert Hoover not to sign the bill. They claimed that raising so many tariffs so high would be a major mistake. They predicted that it would harm most Americans once other countries started retaliating with their own tariffs, which would make American products more expensive and thus less competitive in foreign markets. Hoover ignored their warning and signed the bill. International outrage was swift. Some countries, including Spain, Mexico, and Canada, struck back with increased tariffs on American goods. This hit American farmers hard because exports to Canada had been a major part of their business. For example, before the tariffs, the US was selling nearly 12 million eggs to Canada per year. But after Smoot-Hawley, that number plummeted by almost 99%, down to 170,000. Other American industries were hurt too. US automobiles, iron, and steel exports dropped by over 80%, eliminating hundreds of millions of dollars worth of sales. The US wasn't just harmed economically, though. There were also major foreign policy consequences. For example, Smoot-Hawley's tariffs on imported sugar crushed the Cuban economy, which depended on sugar sales. Cuban anger over the tariffs helped revolutionaries overthrow their US-friendly government, and they replaced it with one that sought more independence from the US. Another consequence was that countries responded to the US tariffs with their own protectionist policies, against not just the US, but often everyone else as well. This reduced the total amount of international trade and deepened the Great Depression, which may have helped set the stage for World War II. But before that conflict began, Americans had changed their minds about tariffs. Franklin D. Roosevelt won the presidency in 1932, promising to lower tariffs as a way to fight the Great Depression. By 1934, Congress passed the Reciprocal Trade Agreement Act, recognizing that tariffs shouldn't just be considered a domestic economic tool, but are also an important device for foreign policy and balancing international trade. With this bill, Congress gave the president authority to negotiate and lower tariffs with other countries. In the following decades, US presidents from both parties used this authority to make international agreements that generally reduce tariffs, helping to build our modern global trade system. Almost all countries are now connected by trillions of dollars in exports and imports, supporting jobs and businesses around the world. So, the dangers posed by trade wars today have even greater potential for political destabilization and economic hardship on a global scale.
So, again, when you get into it, when you really get into it, these events, further, economic turmoil, all right, adding fuel to the Great Depression back in, around that time of 1930, right? And even more so, these events that fueled the fire for World War, all right? The World Wars, all right? And like I said, when you really get into it, because it all looks too familiar. These similar events, which are going to further, is going to bring about the collapse of the society, all right, and also lead to war, the third World War, which the scriptures prophesy of 3 world woes. All right, World War One, World War Two, and this is just more fuel that's going to, bring about World War Three. All right, and another depression. All right, which is going to lead to a total collapse. Because as we always say, in order to usher in the new system, you have to bring down the old system. All right, because not soon after World War Three, I'm sorry, what was that? World War Two. You had the going into the whole, you hear the apostles bringing out the information about Jekyll Island, right? The Federal Reserve and things of that nature, right? So with that being said, all this is going to lead to, like I said, in economy collapse. All right, which is going to usher in this new system. Which again, first the old system has to be done away with, and this is what we're seeing. That's why it is an orchestrated chaos. All right. Soon, these because like I mentioned with the gold, being that gold is the highest that has ever been in existence. I forgot who I was watching. This man was talking about how basically if what we see, if it continues on like this, man, he won't be surprised if gold reaches 5,000 by the end of this year. And it's just like, damn. Yeah, like I said, with the gold, the more the gold goes up, the price of gold goes up. That means again the dollar is being weakened. The dollar more and more is being phased out. That's why I keep mentioning the new way of buying and selling. Right? I'm gonna grab this. Was that Zephaniah? I was just there. In Zephaniah 1. Slowly but surely, and hell, it might not even be a thing of slowly but surely, because I always make this comparison, when you're watching the clock, when you're not paying attention to the clock, time goes by quicker. But when you actually focused on the clock, time seems to be going by slow. I always make that comparison. When you were in school, the day went by quick, but that last hour, it seems like it seems like time's going by slow because you're actually watching the clock. You're watching the minute hand go by, the second hand go by, so it seems like it's going slow. And likewise, we're watching these prophecies, and it seems like things are happening, like I said, slowly but surely. But no, things are happening rather quick. Because this you just had it just came out about the CEOs of these different companies, Walmart, and these other companies. The CEOs had a meeting with Trump, and basically they were telling him that, hey, he needs to stop this shit because pretty soon the shelves are going to be empty, which the scriptures go into that. We'll grab this in Zephaniah 1. Back in Zephaniah 1. Zephaniah 1. Let's read verse 10. Start at 10. It says, "And it shall come to pass in that day, save the Lord, that there shall be the noise of a cry from the fish gate, and an howling from the second, and a great crashing from the hills." Going into, the stock market and things of that nature, you know. It says, "Howl, ye inhabitants of Mektesh, for all the merchant people are cut down. All they that bear silver are cut off." So you see, man, you know, because everyone's talk about getting into the Bitcoin and things of that nature. Buy your gun, your gold, get into the silver, which none of these things are going to save you. That's the point. At the end of the day, all right, none of these things are going to save you. All right, and that's why it's going to hit these people like a shit ton of bricks, man. That's why, and like the Apostle Bar says it, you got to be a visionary, man. Because every time we're downtown on Saturdays, I can picture it. I can foresee, just people, man, losing their mind, waking up, and they're everything is just zero. Everything across the board, everything is just zero. And man, that's going to make people lose their mind. And I can foresee people jumping off those high rise, people jumping off those high rise buildings, man. I can see it. I can foresee it. Maybe it's another premonition, because I've been having a lot of those lately. And the Lord's been giving me a lot of certain of these premonitions, man. And it's like, damn, so maybe it's another premonition, but I definitely foresee a lot of people, jumping off those high rise buildings. All this talk with the trillions being lost, and the Dow Jones, and man, when this shit, like it just mentioned, all right, in verse 10 again, "And it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord, that there shall be a noise of a cry from the fish gate, and a howling from the second, and a great crashing from the hills." So you see, all right, through the Spirit of the Lord, hey, Esau's gonna shut all this shit down. All right, and that's what's going to usher in this new system. He's gonna shut all this shit down, and in the process, in the meantime, there's gonna be all type of chaos. All right, because again, obviously the new system is gonna be ran off of some type of a grid, electricity or something. So eventually it's going to have to come back on, but it's going to be a new system. You see? But while things are shut down, while we are, so to say, in the dark, there's going to be all type of chaos. All right? This could be the time of Jacob's trouble. This definitely will be a time of all hell breaking loose. Like I was just mentioning with the CEOs of these different companies, man, the meeting that they had with Trump, man, talking about the shelves being empty. Because I always say, hey, people, they're going to go about it the ski mask way. We're heading into another Great Depression. All right. We're heading into another Great Depression soon. This fiat currency, this fake money is going to be worthless. All right. It's being devalued every day. Every day, them greenbacks are being devalued every single day. And more, again, we're seeing the phasing out of the cash dollar. All right. I'm gonna jump down to matter of fact, let's jump down to 17. "Now will bring distress upon men, that they shall walk like blind men, because they have sinned against the Lord, and their blood shall be poured out as dust, and their flesh as dung." So you see, man, like I said, during this process, all right, because here it is, you just had, like I said, man, things are moving fast, man. Things are moving real fast. It seems like it's slow because we're actually, on our watch. like I said, we're watching the clock, so it seems like things are going slow, but things are really going real fast, man. To the point, hey, we can't keep up with everything, But Russia and Iran just had they just made some type of a defense treaty, with China, being involved, well, hell, I think China, they just tested some sort of a supersonic missile, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. But man, Iran is, excuse me, them small hats, man, they're talking about attacking Iran without America's help, America without America, things are moving quick, man. Things are moving real quick, hella quick, man. There's gonna be war out here on the streets of America. Like I said, man, this. I'm waiting to see what they do about this. Because everyone was, saying, oh, there's gonna be martial law on April 20th. No, man, you gotta, you gotta, because just because, what was it? When Trump back in January, he talked about the whole. He was going to give, the 90 days for the, for that Insurrection Act, which had 90 days going into that April 20th. Everyone thought that, April 20th was going to be martial law. No, man, whether the military should be used, military force should be used. No, it's just, it is a matter of to see how it plays out, how that's going to play out. Because it's always a thing of sitting back, waiting and watching how it plays out. Just because they give certain dates out, it doesn't mean that you can't. We can't get too caught up in the dates, But I am interested, waiting to see how what's to come of that. All right, as far as Trump, enacting that Insurrection Act, because it is a thing of having certain laws into place. That's what it's about, having certain laws into place. All right, so when they do make their moves, all right, these things are already being in place. They'll already be on the books. All right, for when they are ready to make their move, because again, it's an orchestrated chaos. But verse 18, neither their silver nor their gold shall be able to deliver them in the day of the Lord's wrath, but the whole land shall be devoured by the fire of his jealousy, for he shall make even a speedy riddance of all them that dwell in the land. So you see, man, that silver and the gold, from the actual gold and silver, which there's nothing wrong with, having gold, silver, because it is going to go back to a bartering system, that's another thing. Things are going to get so bad out here. Shelves are going to be empty. Hyperinflation. That's going to be a thing. You talk about the new normal. Well, the new normal is going to be hyperinflation. And not only are you going to have hyperinflation, you're going to have empty shelves. So that in itself is a recipe for disaster. And that's why I always say, that's why people are going to go about things the ski mask way. All right. It's going to get real primal out here. That's, on another note, you women, you're going to learn to revert back to your natural position in being that, a possession. Your natural estate in being a possession. Because, you think it's bad now, as far as, women selling their box. Well, it's, man, you think people think it's bad now. You just wait. Men are going to be selling their daughters for some bread. It's going to get crazy out here, man. Again, this is why we're going to need the spirit of Yahweh Shema Shai, man. It is going to go back to a bartering system. Genesis 47. Genesis 47 and 4. They said moreover unto Pharaoh, for to sojourn in the land are we come, for thy servants have no pasture for their flocks. For the famine is sore in the land of Canaan. Now therefore we pray thee, let thy servants dwell in the land of Goshen. And Pharaoh spake unto Joseph, saying, Thy father and thy brethren are come unto thee. Just want to get to the point, Salakia. I'm going to jump down to verse 13. And there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the corn which they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. Verse 15. And when the money failed in the land of Egypt, so you see, like I just read in Zephaniah, all right, because it's going to be literal gold and silver. It's not going to save you. You know, it might get you by here and there, but ultimately that's not going to save anybody. All right, because this is what these guys are talking about. Get your gold, guns, silver, ammo, food, you know, and so on and so forth, you know. But even to the, you know, the gold and silver, as far as the fiat currency, it is going to completely be meaningless. It's going to be completely worthless. And I'll go as far as to say it's already worthless. The only thing that's really, you know, keeping it afloat is the people's faith in it, you know. But you know, like I said, man, the fact that the gold is going up more and more, it's showing you that the dollar, man, is on its way out, is being phased out more and more. All right. You know, we're already in this inflationary period. Well, inflation unchecked will lead to hyperinflation, and that's where we're headed. All right. $1,000, you know, I'm just picturing it, you know, $1,000 for a gallon of milk. You know, that's why, like it tells you in Revelation 6, matter of fact, I have to get that. But in verse 15, it says, And when the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, Give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence? For the money faileth. And Joseph said, Give your cattle, and I will give you for your cattle if money fail. And they brought their cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses and for flocks and for the cattle of the herds and for the asses, and he fed them with bread for all their cattle that year. So you see, man, again, that bartering system, you see. All right, but it's going to be totally different, you know, this go round. All right, like I said, hey, men are going to be selling their daughters. All right, you know, these digital prostitutes. Hey, the scriptures talk about how their vintage fail and the gathering shall not come. Roughly paraphrasing. Hey, you know, these women that ain't right, man. They're really gonna, you know, they're gonna revert back to a $40 hoe, man. You know, and even less than that, man. You know, selling themselves for you know, whatever, man, whatever you know you can get when that day comes, because it's gonna get bad. A pack of ketchup is gonna be, you know, considered a luxury. It's like when you watch the movie what's that? The Book of Eli. You know, how they had to go out and scavenge for resources, right? You had the one character, I forgot his name, which I believe is a Jake, but basically, you know, the so-called bad guy, the villain, how he had the you know, he had the shampoo, you know, and you know he was washing his girl's hair, washing the chick's hair and whatnot. It goes to show you, when you watch that scene, how valuable shampoo is. You know, a lot of things that are taken for granted now, man, and it'd be the little things, you know. Like I said, a pack of ketchup is going to be, hey, people are going to be, women, just to paint a picture, women are going to be selling themselves for a pack of ketchup, man, just to get something to eat, man. It's going to be that it's going to be crazy out here. You know, it's going to be crazy, you know. And hell, the scriptures talk about that captivity. Hey, a lot of you people are going to get taken against your will. You're going to be held. Because, hey, cannibalism comes back. It reminds me of the woman on the wall, right? You know how, you know, they ate, you her child, and they were supposed to eat the next child, you know, the next day, right? you know, it's famine is cannibalism is coming back in a major way. And like I said, it reminds me of the one movie, The Road, right, where they came across that house, right, and it was a basement full of people, man, and basically they were basically being saved for food, man, because that's how bad it was. And what do you think is coming to the real life? The big screen, which is this so-called life that we live, from the big screen to the actual real life screen, because they say art imitates life, right? Well, hey, Esau doesn't put these things in the movies. Well, the Lord doesn't have it to where Esau doesn't just make these movies for no reason, and really to give us a paint a picture for us, which these movies and these shows where you have all this predictive programming, it doesn't do any justice. It doesn't do any type of justice, and that's why the demonstration, the Lord's just gonna have to show it. He's just gonna have to do it. But nevertheless, all of this is an orchestrated chaos. We are seeing these similar events. All right, these two examples that I just went into. All right, which they led to civil war, world war, or world wars. All right, the Great Depressions, which we're seeing the remnants. All right, all this is looking all too familiar. So like I said, hey, through the Spirit of the Lord, being the prophet of doom, because the people don't want to hear these things, but hey, that's where you're gonna get caught in this. You're gonna get caught in these waves of judgment. All right, because it's gonna catch these people like a thief in the night. Revelation 6. I'm going to read verse 3. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, "Come and see." And there went out another horse that was red, talking about Esau, the red Hebrew Edomite. All right. It says, and power was given unto him. All right. And that power, or that horse, which represents power. All right. It said this power was given unto him. So that's why I say, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shah on the left hand. All right. The Lord is about to let this pit bull loose. He's about to let this pit bull off the leash. Finally. All right. Because we understand again that these things are necessary for us to enter into the kingdom. So come on with it already. Because I did a video on this yesterday, early this morning yesterday. All right, about how, hey, when it comes to how the Lord's going to do it, I look forward to it. Lord willing, because it tells in 2 Corinthians 9 that the Lord's He's going to preserve us. So, to those of us that really believe, listen, we got nothing to worry about. With famine's coming, but what we gonna eat? How? Well, hey, that's where the fun part comes in, and that's the part I look forward to. How's the Lord gonna do it for me? Not being in that woe was me spirit, but hey, how's the Lord gonna do it? Well, hey, we sit back and we're gonna find out. It says, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another, and there was given unto him a great sword. And you see, because I always use the example when bringing the scripture out about the jar. The hand that shakes the jar, right? You put red ants and you put black ants in one jar, and for the most part they live peaceably with one another, right? But the minute the hand shakes the jar, one side blames the other, and what do? They attack each other. Both sides attack each other. Rather than the hand that actually shook the jar, both sides blame each other, and not the actual hand that shook the jar. So that's what Esau's doing through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shah on the left hand. He's orchestrating this chaos. He's shaking the hand, which it tells it on Isaiah 19. Ultimately, the Lord's doing it, but the shaking, the Lord's shaking things up. He stirred things up, and he's using Esau. That's why, again, it's an orchestrated chaos. And that's why, like I said, I believe, I'm under the impression that Trump he's not as dumb as he, um, you know, as he might seem, as he might appear to be. The way that he's just, destroying America, he's being told what to do, man. He's being told what to do. All right. But Esau's, orchestrating this chaos. All right. And again, in the process, when the markets go crashing, everything goes crashing. All right. And meanwhile, this will be the time where, hey, these people, they're going to be at each other's throats. There's going to be all type of civil unrest, shootouts with civilians. These, what do you call them? These militia groups with the police and military. It's just going to be crazy. I always say America is going to be the worst rated R movie of all time in real time. All right. America is going to be the worst place to be. But I also want to make this point here in verse 5. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, come and see. And I beheld on lo a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. But basically, just the point being that, again, that hyperinflation, because this is pretty much what this is going into. All right. A day's wage worth of a day's wage. Because like I use the example, hey, $1,000, man, for a loaf of bread, man, for $1,000 for a measure of wheat, because it mentioned a penny for a measure of Slovakia. It mentioned a measure of wheat for a penny. Yeah, a measure of wheat for a penny. That penny going into that day's wage for a measure of wheat. So imagine that. Picture it. Just literally, whatever your day's wage is. All right, a full paycheck. A full paycheck for literally a cup of flour. Just trying to paint that picture. Imagine that. That's what you call hyperinflation. And this is again, inflation unchecked, it leads to hyperinflation. And, it's only getting worse for this place. It's only going to get worse for this place. All right. But this is what we're heading to. All right. Empty shelves, civil unrest. One thing is going to lead to another. World War III. It's all because you talk about a three-peat, right? I use the 2 examples, right? Where we're about to have a three-peat. But this is, this is all, all these things, we're heading into these times, man. And again, that's why the spirit of Yahweh Bashim Shah is going to have to be with us. All right. And like the scripture say, be it according to your faith. All right. Because you gotta know that the Lord is with you, because again, these things that they're not for us to worry about. Yeah, we're going to be, in a lot of uncomfortable situations. We're gonna have a lot of oh shit moments, but hey, that's the joy, that's the excitement we ought to look for. How's the Lord going to deliver me? Not being why me? What am I gonna do? No, more so, hey Lord, how are you gonna do it for me, Lord? It's about to be one big adrenaline rush. The Lord willing, this was edifying, giving all praises to you. How about Shema Shai? Shalom to you, hopefully, like.